are quiet in Boston right now, but if you're a Celtics fan, you already know that silence doesn't last long in this city. It's the kind of calm that makes you glance over your shoulder because you know the storm's coming. That's just how this team operates. 1 minute is nothing but minor updates and player camps overseas, and the next, boom, some off-season bombshell drops shaking the fan base out of its summer lull. But let's start with what we do know. Nehemiah Keita, yeah, our Portuguese, big man, the pride of Lisbon, had himself a minor knee surgery. It was an arthroscopic cleanup on his left knee, the kind of procedure that's more maintenance than Mayday. It happened right after Boston's playoff exit in the second round. And while those headlines make fans nervous, early reports say he's recovering well and should be good to go for Eurobasket at the end of August. So we're not in panic mode here, not yet. He's expected to be fully ready by training camp. Still, you have to acknowledge the timing. The second Keita locks in as the likely starter at center, boom, he's under the knife. Not exactly the kind of confidence boost Celtics fans were hoping for heading into the season. We already knew the front court was thin. Now you've got a recovering center leading the depth chart. But here's the silver lining: Keita might finally be ready for real minutes. Not just mop-up duty, not just energy off the bench, real nightly responsibility. Look at his numbers. Last season, in just about 13 minutes per game, Keita put up 5 points and 4 rebounds on 65% shooting. He was efficient, if not flashy. Add nearly a block and a steal per game to that stat line, and you start to get a sense of what he might be capable of with increased usage. Not saying he's about to be the next coming of Robert Williams, but if you're getting 10 and 10 with some rim protection in 25 minutes a night, that's real production. And frankly, that's exactly what this team needs, especially when you're trying to keep Tatum and Brown from having to clean up every missed defensive rotation. Now, sure, there's been some chatter about Luka Garza and Xavier Tillman possibly challenging for that starting role. But if we're being honest, neither guy has shown enough to leapfrog Keita in terms of upside. Garza can shoot, no question. He can stretch the floor and give you a few buckets. But defensively, that's a liability Boston can't afford. You're not winning games in May and June if your big man is getting targeted every possession on the pick and roll. Garza gives you numbers, but he doesn't give you stops. Tillman loved the grit, loved the experience, but you can't build around a guy who's missed as many games as he's played the last couple of years. He's got that veteran presence, but physically he's not holding up. And maybe that's why Keita stands out right now. Not because he's a sure thing, but because he's the closest this team has to a real two-way presence in the paint. He's still developing, sure, but there's a ceiling there that's higher than anyone else at that position on this roster. And if we zoom out a bit, step back from the surgery updates and the would you rather debates, you start to realize we're entering a really interesting moment for this Celtics team. Because even after losing in the second round, even with roster holes and financial constraints breathing down their necks, Boston still has something no other team in the East can claim: a proven superstar duo entering their primes under contract. Locked in, ready to go. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. The conversation always comes back to them. For all the flaws, for all the second apron stress and cap gymnastics, having those two guys gives Boston a foundation that most franchises would sell their soul to replicate. The question is what the Celtics can do around them in this current financial landscape. There's no more mid-tier splurging. You're either spending on elite talent or betting on young guys to pop. And that's why this next stretch is so important. Guys like Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, Jordan Walsh, Baylor Shireman, players who've mostly lived on the fringe up to this point, they've now become essential pieces. Because you can't afford to miss. You can't afford to burn another roster spot on a guy who's not developing or can't contribute by midseason. If Keita becomes a legitimate starter, if Shireman turns into a rotation wing who can shoot and defend, if Amari Williams or Hugo Gonzalez gives you 10 reliable minutes a night by March, that's how Boston stays in the mix. That's how you survive the second apron era without falling off a cliff. And make no mistake, other teams in the East are starting to put pressure on that Celtics window. The Detroit Pistons, for example, are no longer just a rebuilding team. Cade Cunningham is knocking on the door of superstardom. Jalen Duren, depending on how his third season goes, he might be more than just a rebounding machine. He might. be a franchise anchor. Jaden Ivey is still figuring it out, sure, but you can see the athleticism and playmaking starting to come together. And then there's Asa Thompson, who might already be one of the best young perimeter defenders in the league. That core in Detroit isn't a threat today, but give it a year. Give it two. They could absolutely be in the conversation, especially if they hit on another vet or draft pick. Same goes for Orlando. Paolo Banchero isn't just a nice story. He's legit. You could argue that after this upcoming season, he might be in the same tier as Tatum. Franz Wagner, steady skilled and still getting better. That duo gives Orlando a dynamic wing pairing. And when you throw in some of the young depth around them, Anthony Black, Jet Howard, maybe another move or two in free agency, that's a team that's going to be in the mix very soon. The Knicks, they've gone Allen, Brunson, Towns, Bridges, Hart, OG, Anunoby. That core is expensive and aggressive. It's also probably the most winnow roster outside of Boston in the conference. But with that comes risk. If Towns doesn't fit or worse gets hurt, you're looking at a roster with no flexibility and no real plan B. And that's the difference between the Celtics and some of these other contenders. Boston might be top heavy financially, but they've still got some young upside and trade flexibility. The Knicks are betting everything on the present. Cleveland, Miami, Philadelphia, they're all orbiting around the top, but none feel like the long-term threat that Orlando or Detroit might be. Embiid's knees, Jimmy Butler's age, Donovan Mitchell's uncertain future. All of these situations have built-in expiration dates. Which brings us back to Boston. For all the flaws, for all the missed opportunities, for all the playoff heartbreaks, this is still a team that's set up to compete for the next 5 years. And they've got the kind of players that you build around, not just stars, but leaders. Tatum's game still has another level. Brown just put together the most complete season of his career. If they figure out the supporting cast, if someone like Keita levels up, if one of these young wings hits, and here's where things get really interesting, not just for the Celtics, but for the entire landscape of professional basketball. Because while Boston is trying to solidify its identity and keep that championship window open, the NBA itself is shifting. Not just in rules, not just in the way teams are built, but geographically. The buzz about NBA expansion has gone from a slow hum to near silence. A few years ago, you couldn't go 2 weeks without someone talking about Seattle getting a team back or Las Vegas finally joining the league. At one point, even Mexico City was seriously in the conversation. But now, that momentum seems to have vanished. Why money, timing, and something far more ambitious on the horizon? NBA Europe. That's right. For years, there's been this floating idea of expanding the league beyond North America. Not just with international games or global game showcases, but a full-on parallel league. And now it's not just a theory, it's an active conversation behind closed doors with some powerful names attached. LeBron James and Maverick Carter are reportedly toying with the idea of launching a European basketball league modeled more after Formula One or UEFA Champions League than the NBA. Smaller schedule, higher exclusivity, maybe 16 games or so, with players flying to different European cities to play mini tournaments. Sounds wild, right? Maybe even a little gimmicky, but don't write it off just yet. Even if that version of the plan doesn't fully take off, the NBA has a serious interest in Europe. Real teams, real markets, real fans. Think about the infrastructure already in place. You've got Real Madrid and FC Barcelona with thriving basketball operations. Turkish teams like Fenerbahce and Anadolu Efes have rabid fan bases. You've got arenas, television deals, corporate sponsors, everything you need to launch a league tomorrow. So now the question is not if, but when. And that impacts the Celtics more than you might think. Because if a new league gets created in Europe, the ripple effects will be massive. For one expansion within the US might get shelved indefinitely. That means no expansion draft, which at first glance might seem like a relief for Boston. No need to protect players. No risk of losing a promising young guy like Peyton Pritchard or Sam Hauser for nothing. But on the flip side, it means the Celtics won't get the benefit of a reset in league structure. No new teams to absorb bad contracts. No fresh market to trade into. Just more pressure to make what you've got work. And let's talk about what Boston's got. Because while the stars are in place, the supporting cast is still a giant question mark. Baylor Shireman, Jordan Walsh, Amari Williams. Hugo Gonzalez. These guys aren't just lottery tickets anymore. They're essential. In the second apron era, development isn't optional. It's survival. You either turn these young players into contributors or you fall off. Full stop. You can't keep spending on depth. You can't just plug holes with veterans or mid-level deals. You've got to build from within. That's why Keita matters so much. He's not just a feel-good story from Portugal. He's not just a high-energy bench piece. He's a real test case for whether Boston can develop talent in-house. Because if Keita turns into a double-double guy who gives you 30 minutes and decent rim protection, he solves so many problems at once. You don't need to trade for a starting center. You don't need to sign a vet who's going to cost you cap flexibility. You just plug in your guy and go. That's the dream in this version of the NBA. But it's not just about Keita. It's about hitting on one or two of these rookies. Maybe Baylor finds his three-point rhythm early and becomes a legitimate wing off the bench. Maybe Jordan Walsh shows he can guard three positions and contribute without needing touches. Maybe Amari Williams becomes a low-usage, high-efficiency big who can back up Keita and keep the defense afloat when the starters sit. It's unlikely all of these things happen, but if one or two do, you're in great shape. You've got cost-controlled production and roster flexibility, and most importantly, you can afford to let other teams panic about a second apron while you focus on winning. And that brings us to the financial side of things, because no conversation about the modern Celtics, or really any team in the NBA, can ignore the looming threat of the second apron. It's become this big scary monster that fans and front offices alike are trying to avoid at all costs. But let's be clear, the second apron doesn't kill dynasties. What it kills is laziness. You can still win with expensive rosters. You just have to be smart and bold. Look at the Phoenix Suns. They went full throttle. They said, screw the apron, let's get our guys. Allen, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker. It didn't work, but they tried. They believed in their window and they went for it. That's going to be the new model for aggressive teams. You see a title opportunity, you pay the price and take your shot. And then there are teams like Oklahoma City, meticulous, calculated. They're not afraid of the apron because they planned for it. 3 max players, a bench full of young talent, and a pipeline of future assets. They've built a system that's sustainable. Boston is somewhere in the middle. They've paid their stars. They're trying to develop the next wave, but it's a razor-thin margin. One misstep, one bust of a rookie, one injury at the wrong time, and suddenly you're looking up at teams like the Magic and Pistons wondering how the Celtics fell behind. That's why the offseason feels so important, even if it's been quiet on the transaction front. Every camp invite every player development session every minute in Summer League. It all matters now. Which brings us back to Eurobasket, not just as a fun tournament to watch, but as a litmus test. For Keita, yes, but also for the Celtics as a whole, because Eurobasket is real competition. These games are intense. The players care. You've got Luka Doncic playing for Slovenia Giannis, suiting up for Greece, Kristaps Porzingis rolling with Latvia. This isn't just a light exhibition, it's serious ball. It's where you see who's ready for prime time and who's just filling a roster spot. And if Keita shows up, if he looks like a starter in that setting, it's going to give the Celtics all the momentum they need heading into training camp. You don't need him to dominate. You don't need 20 and 15. You just need him to hold his own against international talent and look like he belongs. That confidence, that rhythm, it's going to carry over. And more importantly, it gives Joe Mazzulla options. Because right now, Boston can't afford to go small for 48 minutes. And they need a big man who can protect the rim and finish lobs. If Keita can be that guy, it changes everything. Of course, this is all hypothetical. Maybe Keita struggles. Maybe he's not ready. Maybe Boston starts the season scrambling for front court help. That's the risk of betting on internal development, but it's also the only way forward in the modern NBA. You can't build a team with free agents anymore. You can't just trade your way out of problems. You need to develop. You need to adapt. And that's what makes this moment so fascinating. We're watching a team that has the foundation of a champion, but the structure of a project. Tatum and Brown are ready now. They're in their primes. They're not waiting around for a rebuild. But the rest of the roster is filled with question marks. That's the tension Boston has to navigate. Win now, but also build for later. Maximize your stars, but don't bankrupt your future. And honestly, it's going to take a little luck. You need a young guy to pop. You need one of these second-round picks to turn into a legit contributor. You need health. And maybe you need one of the stars to take yet another leap, because the competition is only getting tougher. The Eastern Conference isn't what it was 3 years ago. The next generation is here, and they're coming fast. So if you're a Celtics fan right now, your hope isn't just in a trade or a free agent splash. Your hope is in the growth, in the progress, in the summer workouts and international tournaments, in the quiet moments when nobody's watching, because that's where the next leap happens. Not on the front page of NBA.com, but in the grind, in the development curve, in Keita figuring out how to stay out of foul trouble, in Walsh learning how to make the right rotation, in Shireman building confidence in his jumper. The era of star hunting is over. The era of development is here. And the Celtics, for better or worse, are right in the thick of it, ready or not. But before we continue, please remember to subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest news about the Boston Celtics. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. The NBA world was recently shaken by an unexpected and explosive rumor. The Boston Celtics reportedly made a stunning move by announcing KAWHI Leonard as their newest acquisition. This surprising development has sparked widespread speculation about the future of the Celtics and the potential impact Leonard could have on the team's dynamics and championship aspirations. Leonard, known for his defensive prowess and clutch scoring, would be a monumental addition to Boston's roster, which already boasts young talent and a solid core. Fans and analysts alike are buzzing with theories about how this signing could transform the Celtics' style of play and strategy under their current coaching staff. The mere suggestion of Leonard joining Boston sends shockwaves through the league, as it could disrupt the balance of power in the Eastern Conference. Questions abound regarding what motivated the Celtics to pursue Leonard so aggressively, whether it was a bold trade or a free agent signing, and how the team's chemistry might evolve with such a high-profile presence. The Celtics have always been a franchise known for making calculated risks, but bringing in a superstar of Leonard's caliber might be their boldest move, yet signaling a renewed push for NBA dominance. Speculation has intensified around the details of this potential acquisition, with insiders suggesting that the Celtics front office might have pulled off a complex trade to secure Leonard's services. The logistics behind this deal remain murky, but whispers indicate that Boston could have parted ways with several key players or future draft picks to make space for Leonard's arrival. Such a trade would not come without significant consequences, as it could alter the team's depth and future planning. However, the prospect of Leonard's elite defense and playoff experience is seen as a priceless asset, potentially tipping the scales in crucial postseason matchups. Analysts are debating how Leonard's skill set complements the Celtics' existing roster, which includes sharpshooters and versatile defenders. The synergy between Leonard and Boston's star players could lead to an explosive offensive and defensive combo, making the Celtics formidable contenders. Moreover, Leonard's championship pedigree is expected to inspire the locker room, instilling a winning mentality that might have been lacking in previous campaigns. If this rumor proves true, Boston could be positioning itself as a top contender, not only in the East, but in the entire NBA landscape. The timing of this rumored announcement also adds to the intrigue, as it reportedly comes at a pivotal moment in the NBA season. With playoff battles heating up and teams jockeying for position, acquiring a player of Leonard's caliber could drastically alter Boston's trajectory. The Celtics might be betting on Leonard's ability to carry them through the most challenging parts of the season, relying on his experience in high-pressure situations to guide the team. This acquisition could be seen as a direct challenge to perennial powerhouses like the Milwaukee Bucks and Miami Heat, who have dominated the Eastern Conference in recent years. By bringing in Leonard, Boston could be sending a message that they are not content to merely compete. They intend to win. The rumor mill suggests that the Celtics management has been quietly orchestrating this move for months, signaling a strategic long-term vision. Fans are eagerly awaiting official confirmation, which would undoubtedly ignite excitement and boost morale within the fan base. The possibility of Leonard donning the Celtics' green jersey has stirred a wave of optimism and speculation about a new era for the storied franchise.